Our next speakers are a couple, and they are the co-founders and psychedelic relationship coaches at sovereignlove.nyc. Give it up for Danny and Vanessa Panzella-Velez, please.
Thank you. I don't know, after all okay, all right. He says I get to go till 3 o'clock this afternoon, so buckle in.
We're running a little behind, but that's all right. Give it up for Danny and Vanessa.
Thank you. After everything, first of all, I want to, that meditation this morning that Miriam facilitated really, whew, it went deep. How many felt that? How many had a hard time imagining themselves as a 7-year-old? I had a little bit of a hard time. It was difficult for me to get into that. And it brought up a lot of emotion for me. But I'm not going to hijack the presentation. I'm sorry. Let me introduce us. First of all, we're in the right room. That's where I was going. After everything I've heard this morning, we're in the right room. I love it. I love everything that I've heard so far. We are Danny and Vanessa Panzella-Velez. We are psychedelic integration and relationship coaches. We are also trauma-informed. So we basically work with psychedelic and plant medicines and mostly Jungian integration techniques to help people integrate their trauma to create more successful relationships in their lives. So do you want to start with our gratitude?
Sure.
Yeah.
Before we get started, we wanted to offer a little bit of gratitude. First and foremost, thank you to John and Rebecca Bush for the amazing work that they do in putting these events together, all of the work that happens. We only catch a little glimpse of that, but you guys are doing amazing. So thank you, John and Rebecca, for putting this event together, getting all of the people here. Thank you to the land of Bastrop, Texas, for welcoming us, for receiving all of these beautiful people. The energy here is amazing and beautiful. Thank you to the indigenous people of Bastrop, the Tonkawa people. Thank you for this land, for stewarding this land for many, many years. Thank you to all of our ancestors. I want to express gratitude to each and every one of our ancestors. All of the things that they did, the mistakes, the right decisions, every single thing that has happened that has led to each and every one of us being here, being on the live stream, watching the replay. Thank you, because without them, we would not be here. And of course, thank you to each and every one of you for seeing the world out there and making a decision to build something better, for not sitting in this place of victimhood, for not being upset about what's, yes, being upset, but choosing to build a better world, because without that, our future generations have no hope. So thank you for being that hope. And of course, thank you to the future generations that are going to be able to experience this beautiful new earth that we're creating. And based on the things that we've heard so far, based on the conversations we've had with the people here already, we know that this new earth is possible and that it is going to be incredible. It already is incredible, because I think just being here with all of you has been amazing already, and we're only on day one.
Yeah, give yourselves a round of applause for being the ones that want to move this vision forward, because, I think sometimes we take for granted the things, I know I certainly do. I don't think I give myself enough credit for the work that I am doing. And I think that's common. I think because we feel like there's so much more work to do, we don't celebrate the smaller wins. And I think that's important. So I want to talk a little bit about the Eagle and the Condor and how we came to learn about it in Peru. So kind of our elevator pitch of our story is Vanessa and I were both alcoholics, and we had a lot of trauma that we didn't even realize we were carrying. We were both married before, and when we got into our relationship, we did everything you could possibly do wrong. And I ended up spending a night in jail, and that was kind of like us hitting rock bottom. And we decided we either had to do something to heal our relationship and ourselves, or we were going to have to go our separate ways. And we really loved each other, so we decided to do that work. And right at that time, I told John, I already got my tears out during the meditation. I wasn't going to cry during the presentation, but During that time, the universe sent us. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear, and our mentor is here in the audience, Carla Mora, and the universe sent her to us in exactly the right moment that we needed her, and she helped guide us into this healing work, and she took us to Peru to sit with ayahuasca, and that is where we learned about the eagle and the condor. And what we did not realize at the time, or did not fully appreciate, was that our relationship was kind of living out this eagle and the condor prophecy. So for those who may not be fully familiar with it, the eagle represents Western thought, Western philosophy and society, North America, Europe, and the condor really represents more indigenous, heart-led wisdom and more kind of earthy culture. So we kind of view this as masculine and feminine. And so in our relationship, Vanessa was much more feminine. She was more in touch with her emotions, and I was much more masculine in the sense of everything was intellectual for me. And if her emotions didn't make sense to me, then I couldn't hold space for them. And I was just like, well, if you just change the way you think, you won't feel this way. And I won't have to deal with your emotions. And so, as you can imagine, that created a lot of chaos in our relationship.
That was not sustainable.
No. Caused a lot of chaos. So what we learned was that when we can come into balance internally, balancing our masculine, our thoughts, our logic, and action with emotion and being able to hold space and compassion, first for ourselves, and then that can extend out to other people. And so I kind of feel like with the idea of re-indigenization, right, kind of getting back to our own indigenous roots, bringing our minds into coherence with our hearts is really what it's about. And I'm going to let you take over because I'm...
All right. Actually, I want to share a story that we shared at the Greater Reset. I think this is a good moment to share that. We last year did a 30-day Bobinsana Dieta where we connected with a master plant from the Amazon called Bobinsana. And the Bobinsana tree is a tree that its roots are 7 times deeper than its tallest branch. So if you were to take one of the branches of the Bobinsana tree, you can pull it all the way down to the ground, let it go, and it'll spring right back up. It is so flexible because it is so grounded. And when we are not in coherence with the mind and the spirit, what tends to happen is that we create these very rigid structures that will keep us somehow focused or in alignment, what we perceive as alignment. But then what happens is that if we meet somebody that has a different opinion or a different way of thinking, then that does not fit. And then, like Danny says, fix your feelings so I don't have to deal with them because I am not grounded. And so the idea of re-indigenization is being completely grounded in who we are. As Yoshi and Paula were sharing earlier, who are you? What are your beliefs? What are your thoughts? Where do you come from? Who are your ancestors? Do you know who you are? And so for both of us being born in New York City, being born and raised in New York City, I had a very separate connection from my ancestors, and so did Danny. And through this work with Carla, with all of the many teachers we've met along the way, I started reconnecting to my indigenous culture. Both of my parents are Mexican. I come from Mexican lineage, and I am recently reconnecting to my Spanish lineage because I didn't know I had Spanish blood, but I do. And so learning to reconnect with these parts of myself has led me to feel a lot more grounded, a lot more balanced. And so when I encounter people with different opinions, those opinions do not threaten my opinion because I'm grounded. I know who I am. And that's the importance of that regeneration, of that regenerative culture. If we know who we are, we can be like the Bobinsana tree, and I can come be with another culture and not have the desire to extract from them. And that's the reason why we experience extraction from the land, extraction from other cultures, because we're not grounded in who we are. And so as I was reconnecting to my ancestry, to my indigenous culture, Danny was a little bit confused.
I felt really insecure because I'm like, what's my culture? McDonald's and MTV, that's what I was raised with. So, like, where's my culture? I'm Italian and Irish, almost 50-50, and a little bit of Greek on my Italian side. I learned that there was a very large population of Greeks in Italy, as I have been digging into my lineages. And what I started to find as I started to look into my Celtic roots and my Italian side was that so many of the indigenous cultures of those cultures had the same beliefs as Vanessa was learning and finding in her Aztec and Toltec roots. And so I realized, I said it to Vanessa, I was like, oh, it's so interesting that these cultures from different sides of the planet were, so much in alignment. Their principles and their values and even a lot of the rituals are so much the same. And she said, yeah, because it's all about being in harmony with nature. This is what the condor represents, right? And so I want to also point out that this isn't a judgment of the eagle. It's not a judgment of Western thought and logic, because we need that as well. But we need to bring it into balance. When what we see happening with the Western Empire or the US empire, imperialism, and all this domination is when we do not respect the heart, when it's all up here and just how can we get what we want, with no consideration for the land, the earth, other people. So it's not a judgment of one is better than the other. Indigenous culture is not necessarily better than Western culture, but it's about bringing those two things those two energies, really, into balance with each other.
Yeah, and that's one of the things in the Toltec tradition, the Aztec tradition, this period of the Eagle and the Condor Prophecy is known as the dawn of the sixth sun, or the sixth sun, which is the new era that's coming in. And one of my teachers, Ugonawi, has talked about how we had to allow for these indigenous cultures to kind of go underground. And like Danny said, there's no judgment of the eagle energy, because without the internet, a lot of us probably wouldn't have connected. Without cell phones, maybe we wouldn't have connected. Our community gets to grow. We get to share these ideas. We wouldn't have Zoom people joining in. We wouldn't have people watching on YouTube, right? The technology is here to amplify all of this information, all of this wisdom, for us to share it, for us to be able to connect on a deeper level. So there's value in both of these things. And when we learn to integrate that, again, like the Bobin Sana tree, we are more grounded. We're not afraid of AI, right? We learn how to use it in a more conscious way, because now we're using the concepts that Paula was talking about, corazonando, learning to bring it into the heart space. Is what I'm doing in alignment with the earth? Is it providing value to the earth? Am I helping my community? Am I building something, or am I just taking something to build up my own ego, right? It's all about bringing that awareness so that we can use these tools that have been brought about by Western culture and implement them into our connection to the land. We're going to hear from speakers talking about regenerative soil, about farming practices, permaculture, all of these things. And it's great to have all of that information, but are we connecting to the land? Are we learning to communicate? And some of it may seem overwhelming. And I think the beauty of re-indigenization, about connecting the eagle and the condor, is that we don't all have to move to the jungle and have these practices again, or we live in New York City. We don't have the opportunity right now to move out of New York City because Danny has a child from his previous marriage. So we're kind of staying in New York until he's a little bit older, and we're able to have more of flexibility with our schedule and how we get to see him and spend time with him. And as a result, we've learned to implement some of these indigenous practices into our home in New York City. We live in a pre-war New York City apartment, and we hold ceremony. We connect to the land every single day. We go out to the park. We go walk through our neighborhood, connect to the trees. So we don't need to have these extreme changes, because I think sometimes we get caught up in, I have to do all the changes right now.
You don't have to move to the jungle and wear a loincloth to re-indigenize.
Exactly. It's all about bringing in these practices when you can, where you can, but bringing the awareness of it into reality.
I had a thought and it fluttered away. There's a concept called the ancient future that a lot of people have been talking about, and it's kind of this idea that Vanessa was talking about, bringing in some of these ancient ideas, spirituality and values, but also marrying it with, again, the eagle and the condor energies, marrying them together. The prophecy says that the eagle and the condor will fly together in harmony. And, you know, we've really been witnessing that. Being in the psychedelic space over the last almost 7 or 8 years, we've been seeing, and maybe many of you, how many people in the audience have heard of ayahuasca? Wow, that's, I would say, like almost 60%. Okay. So the reason you've heard of ayahuasca is re-indigenization. It's Westerners going down and sitting with these shamans in the jungle, learning these things that we're talking about, and then coming back and then spreading that information here. That is the process of our two cultures marrying to each other. We're learning from each other. And if you don't think that we're teaching them as well, we are. They are receiving from us as well. And we like to call that sacred reciprocity, or it's known as sacred reciprocity, where we're working together hand in hand to create this new earth. And all of us are necessary. We all have energy to bring to this process. We all have a very specific, what we would, you know, what Yoshi was saying, who are you? And who you are is that beautiful and powerful and free energy that you bring to this process of creating the new earth.
I also wanted to talk about the importance of connecting to the land. Miriam mentioned it earlier. And Rebecca actually mentioned it about feeling really connected when she got to Texas. I was like, yes, I'm connected to this land. When we arrived to Texas, and this is something that our mentor Carla has mentioned to us many times, wherever you go, connect with the land, find out who the indigenous people of the land were, and have a little ceremony, offer something to the land, ask for permission to be on the land. And so on Wednesday when we arrived, we asked for permission. We've been here before. We know the indigenous people of the land are the Tonkawa people. And my bestie reminded me yesterday that Tonkawa means we stay together. That is the meaning of that word. And I thought, how fitting that the Exit and Build Land Summit is being held on a land where the people were called, we stay together. We're building community on this land. And when you start to pay attention to these things, you realize why certain things start to happen, or why you feel a certain way. Maybe this is a place where family and community building is important, and maybe the energy feels higher there. Maybe it's just in our minds. I don't know, but it works. It feels right. And I think it doesn't matter if it's just in our minds or if there's a metaphysical thing. I think at the end of the day, it really is all about what feels right for us. And it feels right that we're here in community on this land, that we're working together, that we're learning from each other, that we're all bringing our strengths to the table and saying, this is what I've got to offer. What can I learn from you? What can you learn from me? And we are in that sacred reciprocity, and the Aini, as Paula was saying, that sharing, and it's not from a place of you have to give me what you have, but rather we become beings of service. And I think that is really the shift that we're moving into as a collective community, as a society, where we're wanting to be more of a service. And it feels good to be of service. How many of you feel good when you're of service to your community, when you're growing food and you're offering it to your neighbors and you're sharing your wisdom and your tips and tricks and strategies? I know John Bush feels amazing when he does that. So I think this is the direction that we're moving in, and I think it's important to really be grounded so that we can experience more of that.
Yeah, it's whether you believe in the woo-woo aspect or not, and we are totally woo-woo and unapologetically so. But even if you don't believe in the woo-woo, when you do these ceremonies, when you ask permission from the land, when you're going to plant your garden and you ask permission from the land, there's an energy, it changes the way you view things, right? So you're coming at it from a place of humility and gratitude and reciprocity, and that positive energy, modern science is proving these things, that it creates a positive relationship with the land, and then you're gonna find less frustration when your check one. Your plants aren't growing the way you wanted them to grow, right? But when you come at it from a more positive place, you're going to find that you meet less resistance. And that feels like magic to me, but with science, and I think it's really just a different language, the way they describe it.
So, what are some tips for re-indigenization?
Okay, well, you've heard a bunch about shadow work this morning, and my wife likes to say that shadow work is her love language, and I can confirm that that is in fact true because I never get a break from shadow work. And I say that jokingly because shadow work is hard. It's a simple concept, right? You're making, like the gentleman shared earlier, the quote from Carl Jung, you're making your subconscious known. You're knowing yourself. You're learning about yourself. So for me personally, I had a difficult relationship with my mom growing up. Some things that happened when I was like a teenager or a young teenager, adolescent, that my 12-year-old brain just could not interpret correctly. I got the idea that my mother didn't love me. And looking back now, it seems kind of silly, but this is a real serious belief that I had internalized. And so then I lived the rest of her life until she passed with that belief, carrying that belief. And that's hard. It's hard to go through life thinking that your mother doesn't love you. And it created a lot of defense mechanisms. And so I created this mask. And the mask was that I'm just like this carefree guy, and I'm all about the party, and I'm really social, and I'm always out there, and the life of the party. But last year when we did that Bopensana Dieta, it was a really difficult experience for me because I had to face the fact that a lot of that was just a mask that I built to hide the fact that my inner 7-year-old, the one that I had trouble visualizing this morning, because I'm still working on this, and I think this is a lifelong process of healing. But my inner 7-year-old still carries some of that grief of feeling like his mother didn't love him. And so this is getting really heavy, right? But I say that to say, like, if we go deep into those things and we have the courage to really look at those things and face those things and heal them and love our inner children and remind them that you are loved. You were loved. Mom may have communicated in ways because she had difficult times with her parents, and trauma gets passed down. I come from a family of alcoholics. I can forgive her of those things and realize she was trying to love me the best way that she could in that moment. And then that releases me of having to carry that resentment and that anger that then makes me want to wear that mask, right? So now when I'm outgoing, it's from a more embodied place. I'm doing it because I genuinely feel the joy of enjoying your company, not just because I have to play this role to hide the fact that I have pain deep inside of me. And that pain limits me from being able to fully experience joy in life, happiness, and to achieve my goals. These are blocks that prevent us from achieving our goals. So for me, one of the most important ways that I've re-indigenized and learning techniques from my ancestry, from the spiritually, mostly for me so far, it has been through the Celtic lineage, learning the spiritual beliefs of the ancient Celts and some of the rituals that they use to do this type of work has been so empowering for me. It has given me a sense of identity, like McDonald's and MTV is not my culture, right? I have a deep lineage inside of me of healing and love and harmony with the earth and appreciation for the earth that I can tap into at any moment to empower me to achieve any goal that I want to achieve. So that's my tip.
Yeah, and I think, going back to what we were saying before, in connecting with the seasons is another way of re-indigenization. Ultimately, like Danny shared before, the indigenous cultures are all about being in harmony with nature. So are we slowing down in the winter? Are we picking up our energy again in the summer? Realigning to these cycles really helps us embody the energy that we're experiencing. You know, a lot of people get the winter blues because we're pushing through, even though our bodies do want to rest. And so when we start tapping into some of these cycles, and when we start acknowledging the cycles, even just acknowledging the cycles is a really huge difference, makes a huge difference. For example, if I still have to work in the winter, I make the conscious effort to recognize, okay, if I'm feeling tired, I'm not going to beat myself up about it. I'm not going to say, what's wrong with you? You should be go, go, go. I'm like, oh, it's winter. Yes, my body's going to be a little bit more tired during this season. So it's okay if I feel tired. I'm going to make sure to schedule some self-care time. I'm going to make sure to slow down a little bit in whatever small way that I can, because as I said, we're going to do this little by little. We're going to slowly incorporate these old ways of being. The Eagle and the Condor Prophecy, it's not like one day we're going to wake up, like Derek was saying this morning. It's not like January 1st of 2030, the great reset agenda is going to be implemented. It's slowly over small periods of time. And so that's the same way we're going to take this re-indigenization concept and slowly over small little changes, small shifts, bringing the children to these events, allowing the children to connect with other people, with our community, letting the children experience us learning, watching us learn. That's how we teach the future generations. We're not going to build a new earth and then say to the children, okay, here's the new earth, off you go. No, we have to bring them into the building of the new earth. We have to bring them into the exit and build. We have to bring them into our community, show them that we know how to resolve conflicts, that we know how to speak to each other, that we know how to be in community with people that don't always think like us. These are all ways that we are not only building the new earth, but we're building the children that are going to help carry that new earth forward.
Yeah, I think what comes up for me too is when you're doing this type of work, it helps you to show up in community in a more holistic way and in a healthier way, and you'll be able to relate. How many communities over the past 15 years that I've been in this movement have I seen people create the communities in a physical way? They buy the land, they build the houses, they get the gardens together, but the communities fall apart because they don't know how to relate to each other with compassion and empathy and work through the challenges. There's a lot of challenges that are going to come up, right? We're all people, we all have different points of views, and there are going to be conflicts, and if we don't know how to work through those conflicts as a family, as an extended family, a community, then it doesn't matter if we've built the physical infrastructure, because it's going to go by the wayside. But if we are doing this internal work, if we are working first within ourselves to balance masculine and feminine, the eagle and the condor energies, and then with our spouses, with our intimate relationships, our primary families, right, our children, and then our neighbors, and then our extended community, and then the world out there. Because they're going to hear our message. There's a saying, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. So what's the best way to wake up the normies is to be able to relate to them with empathy and compassion, not just to tell them they're wrong, the systems they're in are wrong, you don't know what you're doing, but it's to connect with them, to build a bridge with that empathy and connect, and then they'll be open to receiving. This is science. We're talking about the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic. The sympathetic nervous system keeps us in fight or flight. And that's why we're constantly, with the media, they're constantly pumping the propaganda. They want to keep us in the sympathetic nervous system, so we're in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. But when we can relax, we ground, we can use breath work or many different meditation ways to ground and calm our nervous systems, get into the condor energy, and then that's when energy gets directed away from fight or flight back into critical thinking. And now they can hear the message, but we have to make them feel safe first. And we can do that by connecting with them.
All right, I think that's our time. So thank you very much. Thank you all for being here, and have an awesome exit and build.
We love you all. Please feel free to come up to us, and we would love to talk to all of you. Or at least I would.